Hi guys, this is Zach for the Newlyweds. Kaylee's at work. I went and saw the Wolverine yesterday, and Only God Forgives, the newest film from Nicholas Winding Refn, was on demand now, so I figured I'd check that out. And start off with the Wolverine. Wolverine was a really good movie. James Mangold is a really good director, and I like the way that he directs movies. The cinematography was good, the music was good. There was about 4 or 5 really good action scenes in this movie. The best one is the train sequence. I thought that was very well done. It was very much an in and out. It came in, it did what it needed to do, and it got out. It wasn't long or overextended. And usually during action sequences, there's this big orchestral score, and that's okay. This one didn't have one. It was kind of the sounds of the train going by, and the buildings that were going by, and the stuff that was hanging over, and them trying to hang on. And it did make it feel more realistic. This movie's night and day from the Wolverine's X-Men movie, or the X-Men Origins Wolverine movie from 2000, I believe, 9. This is way different. This is very good. Hugh Jackman's at the top of his game. Probably gives the best acting performance I've seen this year so far. I mean, there have been a couple. I really liked Mark Wahlberg in Pain and Gain, and Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man 3. But I'd say Hugh Jackman's probably given the best one this year so far. It was very good. I know it comes from Wolverine lore. I haven't read a whole lot of the comics to do with the X-Men or Wolverine. I mainly know the X movies. This one it holds the original X-Men trilogy as things that have happened in the past, especially the events of X3, which, it's okay. I didn't hate X3. So if you hated some of the things that happened in X3, that might take your opinion down from this one. But overall, I liked it. I gave it an 8 out of 10, which is a boss rating. It was really good for me. Now I get to more of the spoiler section of it, whereas basically it's the tale of Wolverine's in a cave, he's having nightmares about Jean, because he had to kill her, and she was hurting people. He still feels guilt from that. He gets called up by this guy that he saved this guy's life in Nagasaki in World War II era, and now the guy wants to thank him. Well, when he gets to the guy's place, he's saying, you kind of don't appreciate your mortality. You wish that you were mortal again. So you can transfer it to somebody. Why don't you transfer it to me? And Logan's like, you don't want what I have. You don't understand. And the guy dies, and the guy's granddaughter inherits the company instead of his son, which pisses off the guy's son. There's a hit taken out at this guy that died's funeral, and basically Wolverine realizes he needs to stay and help out the granddaughter of the guy that owns the company. And his kind of tag-along sidekick character in this movie is a red-headed girl that finds him in the cave in the United States, and she was taken off the street by this guy. So she's not really a family, but she kind of is, and she's really good with a sword and stuff. And she was good, and the acting is generally very, very good in this movie. It feels like a samurai movie, like some of the more samurai movies you've seen with really good character development, and that's kind of what this feels like, more so than a superhero movie, I would say. It has a very different tone to it, and the tone's good, and the pacing's good. There's a couple things in the movie that kind of, not so much that they don't make sense, but there's not needed in it. The Viper's in this movie, and I think that her character wasn't played to the same kind of way all the other characters are playing theirs. It was very over the top, which can work, and it didn't ruin anything for me. But it does, you can see the similarities to the other characters and how they kind of are playing off of each other, and hers was just kind of out there by itself. Again, it didn't ruin anything for me, but it was noticeable. And then you have the Silver Samurai, which is CGI big samurai guy that Wolverine has to fight, and it kind of suffers from the multiple villain syndrome of, if you have Viper, why do you need this? I don't know if it was in the original lore or not. I have no idea. But in terms of the movie, you didn't need that. But it was okay. The ending was good, and the post-credit scene, I'm not going to ruin it for you. stay after the credits. It's actually probably only the first 25 seconds of credits, and then it cuts back to this post-credit scene. Do not miss that. If you have went and seen it and missed it, I would say it's almost worth trying to catch it on a matinee and go see it and then watch the credit scene, and it is awesome. It is really, really awesome. Probably one of the best post-credit scenes that I've ever seen in an age where that's extremely popular now to have that. So that's what I thought of the Wolverine. It was a good movie. And now we go to Only God Forgives, which I really liked to drive. And when I saw this on the on-demand, the reason that I watched this is because I thought, you know, I really like Drive. I know this is getting a lot of hate. This movie is. People are saying it's, you know, just trash, it's terrible. But, you know, I'll give it a watch. And I like a lot of movies that are generally hated, and I hate some movies that are really liked by others, so I'm definitely not bandwagon hopping here. You know, I think that some movies get a lot more hate than they deserve, and some movies are kind of let go and don't get enough. So, for me, this movie, it seemed like, in general, every time you had a scene that was really good and very effective, there was one after that either didn't make sense or it just was done in a different way and it took you right out of the movie. I'd give it a 5 out of 10 because it was, in the end, it was flat, and that's the side tag rating for a 5 for me is flat. And it's not because I sat through the whole time and hated it. I really didn't. The first 15 minutes are good. You hit a kind of a drag, and then again back and forth, very much back and forth the rest of the movie. There are scenes in this movie that I mean, it's almost like it was done by two different people, because there's scenes where you think, okay, that was good, that made sense, and then the next scene is very slow, very overdone. And one of my biggest gripes about this movie is that there's a lot of blatant, like, shoving things at the screen. Subtlety is okay. Subtlety is a good thing. You don't have to force so much stuff, and in that way, yeah, it kind of reminded me of a Terrence Malick movie in that way. The way it's shot is nothing like, it's not shot anything like a Terrence Malick movie. The cinematography is beautiful, but it's not that Malick-y style of cutting away from the plot to take a look at this beautiful lake over here in the distance. My general rule is if I have a movie that I dislike, or even a movie I hate, you should name 3 things that you like about it. And I didn't hate this movie, but if I had to click off 3 things that I really liked about it, number 1 would be the cinematography. Again, this is shot beautifully. Nicholas Winding Refn, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it or not, but he definitely knows how to shoot a scene. Cinematography was top notch. And I really like the music. It's a little different than the Drive music. It's not as techno-y, but I really enjoyed the music. There's not a ton of it in the movie, but what there was, I really liked it. And Kristen Scott Thomas's performance in this movie was great. Probably the best supporting actress performance of the year so far that I've seen. Very good. And there is, in a sense, a lot of stuff to like in this movie. The problem is, it's deviated out. It's little clips of things instead of a whole big centerpiece. But those are probably the 3 biggest things in this movie that I really enjoyed. So I'd give it a 5. And now for the spoiler side of it. You start off with Julian, who's Ryan Gosling's character, and his brother. They run this kind of drug... this drug dealing operation, but they own a boxing, like an amateur boxing place. Well, I wouldn't really say amateur boxing. A lot of people are in the crowd, so I would almost say it's a pretty good venue for they're in Bangkok, so I would say it's a pretty decent venue for boxers. And you follow David, who is Ryan Gosling's brother's character, and he's going into these whorehouses, and he's looking for a hooker, and he talks to the guy of one of them, and he says, yeah, I want one that's young. And the guy's like, well, I don't have anybody that young. And he says, well, I want a 14-year-old. And the guy's like, no. And the guy David's like, well, do you have a daughter? And he's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. So he takes a glass and smashes it over his head and runs in the room. I don't know if he slaps one of the girls in the room. I don't know. And he leaves. Okay, so you officially don't care about this character now at all whatsoever. And they introduce this cop character who's coming to investigate this scene. And when you see the scene, it's of this girl that the David character has found and has raped and killed. So you see that, and you see what happened from that. And the cop character in the movie is he's very quiet, and you can kind of tell that he's overlooking this, and the girl who's murdered's father is there. So he lets him in, takes a look at this, and this David guy's still there. He's got blood all over him. You can clearly tell, what happened. And the cop says, okay, I want you to do whatever you want. I want you to, just do whatever you want to do. So he literally leaves the room, and he leaves the dad of a girl that has just been murdered, and her body is still there, by the way, and the killer in the same room. And naturally, the guy beats David to death, and it's brutal, and I love it. It doesn't show a lot of it, but when the cop comes back in the room, you can barely tell David is even a man or a woman or whatever, because his face is so scrunched. I love it. Practical effects in this movie, blood effects were good, really, really, really good. I like that about this movie. No CGI. But anyway, so the cop then takes him to this place in the middle of nowhere, and he's in front of the cop's car, and the cop has a couple other cops with him. They don't talk, they're just kind of the guards, And he has a sword on his back, and he's talking to the guy, and he's like, you let this happen to your daughter. And the guy's like, I don't know what you're talking about. My daughter just died. Please don't kill me. I killed the guy, that killed my daughter. And the cop's like, well, you put them in that situation because you basically had them do this. And he's like, I have 4 daughters, and I couldn't make ends meet. So he basically whored out his own daughters. So the cop takes his sword and chops off half one of his arms. Okay. I mean, that doesn't make any sense at all in terms of, real world, but for this movie, okay, fine, I get it. And, he sold out his daughters, and he did it so that he wouldn't forget his other daughters, fine. So Ryan Gosling finds out that his brothers died, and his emotion is this. And that's really what annoys me through especially the second half of the movie. You could, hey, Julian, you just won the lottery. Hey, Julian, did you hear that, your house is burned down. Everyone you've ever met is dead. Your mother's dead. All of your friends are dead. Really. It's very Kristen Stewart-y. And I didn't like it at all. And Ryan Gosling is a good actor. So I know that was coming from the director's standpoint of how he wanted to be played. Okay, fine. But it just didn't do it for me. So you follow the cop, and he goes home to his wife and kid or whatever. So Ryan Gosling finds out that where the guy is who killed his brother. All he knows is his brother's died. He doesn't know how or what. So he corners the guy, and he's like, hey, why'd you do this? Why did you kill my brother? And the guy tells him, why. And Ryan Gosling lets him go. And then Kristen Scott Thomas enters the movie as Ryan Gosling's mom. She just found out that her firstborn son has died. And she's like, she meets up with her son and says, Julian, did you find the guy? Did you kill the guy? And Ryan Gosling's like, no, I let him go. And she's like, why? Why would you ever do that? The guy killed your brother. Why'd you let him go? And he's like, well, it's a little more complicated. He raped and murdered this guy's daughter who was like 14 years old. And she's like, well, I'm sure he had his reasons. Obviously. And obviously the guy had his reasons to kill him, but I guess that doesn't enter the mind. She's a very delusional character in the movie, and she kind of uses Julian to do her bidding. Like, you can tell that's the way it's been. And so there's a scene in the movie where Ryan Gosling is with a hooker, and he says to her, I want you to come meet my mom, and I want us to act like we're a real couple. Okay, fine. So he buys her this dress, and she puts it on, and they go to see, and the mom is incredibly rude and just belligerent to the girl and to Ryan Gosling, and tells all this stuff, like talking about how Julian, Ryan Gosling's character, was jealous of his brother David because David had a bigger dick than he did, and all kinds of weird stuff like that. And so they leave eventually, and the girl's name is Mako, the girl that he likes or whatever. And she's like, "Why do you let her talk to you like that?" And he picks her up, pushed her against a wall, and puts his hand around her neck. And it's because she's my mother. And there's the first time he shows any kind of, emotion in this movie. So at that point, I'm like, well, you're an asshole, and I kind of don't care about what happens to you now. That was a real dick thing for you to do. And then on top of that, he says, if you don't want that dress, take it off now. And then he goes, take it off! And he screams, and it's just so... That scene was awful. And she takes off the dress and walks home, like basically in bra and underwear, in a city where apparently women get raped all the time. That's real nice. Our hero, ladies and gentlemen of the story. So we follow Julian, who now most of us don't care about, and he runs into the cop, and he goes, "You want to fight?" So they fight. They're in their little boxing thing, and they fight. And Julian gets the hell beat out of him by the cop. I don't even know if the guy lands a single punch against him. And afterwards, he's all beat up, and his mom, who was there to see it, but, didn't say a word, is like, this cop's going to come after me now. Like, he knows. He's going to find out what I did. He's going to find out that, I went out and killed the guy that killed my son. You have to take care of this for me. So, Julian goes to the cop's house and kills his wife, and I think the daughter lives. I'm pretty sure the daughter lives. He kills one of his own guys before he can kill the daughter, so the daughter's alive, and he leaves. And meanwhile, the cop is en route to Kristen Scott Thomas, and he kills Kristen Scott Thomas. And before he does, they have a conversation, and she brings up stuff like, well, my boy's very dangerous. He killed his own father, And when she's talking to Julian, she's like, I know I never said I'd never tell you this again, but please take care of this for me. After your father, I know I said I would never ask you again. So obviously she just uses him, to do her bidding, and he's so absent-minded, he just does whatever she wants. Okay. So, Julian returns to find his mother dead. And I assume the cop goes home and sees his family dead. You don't ever see that, but I assume he does. And so Julian's sitting there looking at his mom, who's dead. And he takes out a knife or something and cuts her stomach, like by her womb, and sticks his hand in it. Why? Why would you? No, nobody would do that. I don't care how much you hate or love your mother. If you found her murdered, you would not cut open her stomach and stick your fingers in her stomach. That made no sense. Took me right out of the movie. What does that mean? It's almost like it's trying to force some sort of bullshit symbolism. It doesn't make sense at all. So he leaves, enough of that scene. And it goes to the strip club, to see another girl besides the one he was seeing because, she was so awful. So the cop obviously had gone home and seen that his wife and kid was harmed, wife's dead, and he goes to find Julian, and they've already had a fight. So you're assuming that Julian won't go quietly. No, he goes quietly. He just walks with him, and then they're out in the outskirts of somewhere, and the cop has a sword, and Julian willingly puts out both of his arms as he cuts off both the guy's arms. Why he wouldn't just kill him, I don't know, but it's some sort of symbolic thing. Early in the movie, before Julian even meets the cop, he's having visions of the cop and worried that the cop is coming after him. This specific cop with the sword. That doesn't make sense that he would do that. And they want this cop to be so intimidating, and he is, except for one thing. About 3 scenes worth of this movie is just the cop on stage singing a karaoke style of a song to his police force. I don't understand why, but it's very, I don't know, it's very kooky kind of, and it kind of makes that character. I mean, imagine Jigsaw in the first Saw movie. He was on stage, you know, it doesn't make sense. It's not intimidating that he's singing. I don't know if they were trying to make it to where he seems like a normal person, or that he's just a regular guy. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but it didn't work. It did not work. 45 minutes of this movie is good, and the rest is just not good, and they're just spliced together, which it brings down the good parts of this movie, and it forms a script that doesn't make much sense at the end of it. It has characters behaving. It's okay for characters to not act normal when we're in a movie where it's not supposed to be that way, but this movie is set up 110% so that you can, it tries to make it to where you can connect with these people. And the most obvious scene is Julian cutting into his mom's stomach. Why? You know, doesn't make any sense. No normal human being would act that way. And, you know, I get it that the mother was blind with grief of her son, and she is a drug dealer that obviously has had people killed before. Okay, fine. But no one acted normal, really. And the cop, we don't see any scene of him grieving. We only see one scene of his family. It's right before they're killed. So we don't get a chance to feel anything for his family, or learn anything about his family, or anything at all. It's very thrown in there real quick, like just to get to 90 minutes. There's a lot of scenes that could have been ended about 2 or 3 minutes sooner that just drug on to get that 90 minutes. You know, you got to get to 90 minutes somehow, I guess. But there are a lot of things to like about this movie, and it sucks that I have to, you know, I have to say that it just didn't work. It was a flat movie. It was just bad. I didn't even really give it a terrible rating, because for me, anything that I rate 4 out of 10 or under is bad, and this I give a 5. So it's more just flat than bad. But there's a lot of good. There's a lot of bad. So if you're a fan of Nicholas Winding Refn, yeah, see it. If you're a fan of Drive, I would still say watch this movie. But just because you like Drive doesn't mean that you're going to like this movie. Don't pay a whole lot to see it. If you can rent it, if it's on demand for not a lot of money and you have the spare money around, sure. But if you're sitting there thinking about, well, should I stay home and watch Only God Forgives and pay $5, or go see the Wolverine in the theater for $6 or $7, go see the Wolverine. If it comes down to that, only see this movie if, like I said, if you're a big Nicholas Winding Refn fan, if you really liked Drive and like his style, you know, don't pay a whole lot of money to go see this in a theater. Don't pay a whole lot of money to see it. You know, and if you like it, then good. I'm glad you liked it. There are parts of this movie that I did like. You know, just in the end product just wasn't very good. So me and Kaylee are going to watch Mud, the Matthew McConaughey indie movie that came out earlier this year. I wanted to see it in theaters, and it just came and went, you know, but it's coming on demand. So we're going to check that out and have a review up for you guys, both of us, with Red 2 and Mud. So we'll see you then. Thanks for watching, guys.